them like lion, and wild beasts shall tear them. O Israel, thou hast destroyed thyself, but in me is thine help. I will be thy king. Where is any other that may save thee in all thy cities? And thy judges of whom thou saidst, give me a king and princes. I gave thee a king in mine anger, and took him away in my wrath. May God bless all of us through this reading. Before we progress in this sermon, let me tell a few things about this particular book. I would like to mention the structure of the book of Hosea. When we see the first 3 chapters of the book, it deals with Hosea's pain when his wife commits adultery and leaves him. Then we see in this book that the Hosea is talking about his experiences as an object lesson to communicate the pain the Lord experiences when Israel commits adultery and goes away from him by worshipping pagan deities. And then the remaining 11 chapters we see that he elaborates on the message of the Lord's judgment and compassion. So this is the structure of this book. First 3 chapters we see that Hosea is talking about his wife who is committing adultery and leaving him, and then he is using his experiences as object lesson for the pain the Lord experiences when Israel is going away from the Lord, from God. Now, when we think of idolatry, I don't think any of us here sitting under this roof is not aware of what does it mean by idolatry, right? We are aware of. We are living in a country where our neighbors, our friends, they are into that kind of worship. They worship idols. They worship some statues. They worship some objects. And we are well aware of this. Now, when we talk about Israel, when the unified nation Israel that had existed under David and Solomon broke into 2, the northern kingdom became known as Israel and the southern kingdom as Judah, and there was a ruler by name Jeroboam of Israel. He set out to discourage people from going to worship in Jerusalem, the capital of southern kingdom, and to prevent people from going to Jerusalem, he built 2 shrines, or I would say 2 worship places, and there he kept 2 cows, golden cows, and the places are Bethel and Dan, that we can read in 1 King chapter 12. And this encouraged people to ended up in syncretism. And syncretism is sin. They were worshipping the Lord, the God of the Bible, and in that worship, they included some of the elements of Baal worship with sexual indulgence. And that was syncretism. They ended up in that. And we see that Hosea is addressing his prophecies to northern kingdom of Israel, focusing on its religious behavior and violation of its covenant relationship with God. Because they were violating the covenant relationship with God. And Hosea is addressing that idolatry. Hosea is addressing the sin of syncretism, where they are worshipping the Lord and there are elements of Baal worship and sexual indulgence. Now, when we talk about self-destruction, right, I said we are going to look into this particular subject, a path of self-destruction. We are not dealing with all the aspects of it, but I just would like to bring some indicators And here we see one indicator, first indicator, and that is idolatry. Idolatry. First indicator, idolatry, right? Now, when Israelite worship the Lord, other nation trembled. We read this in Hosea chapter 13, verse 1, at the power of Israel's God. They used to tremble when Israel was worshipping the God of the Bible. But when they got involved in Baal worship, they lost their status they had enjoyed. They enjoyed a status, but they started Baal worship and they lost that particular status. Now, the practice of Baal worship entered in Jewish religious life during the time of Judges and became widespread in Israel during the reign of Ahab, and it also affected Judah. And if you can read about these all things in Judges chapter 3, in 1 Kings chapter 16, and 2 Chronicles chapter 28, verse 1 and 2. Now, we all know the Bible very well, at least some of the parts of the Bible very well. And we know before entering into the promised land, the God of Israel warned them against worshipping Canaan's God or the deities of that particular land. But Israel turned to idolatry, ignoring what God said to them. Not only do they now use their God-given skills to make idols, but when people speak of Israel, they now say they offer human sacrifices, not only creating idols, not using their skills in making idols, but they started human sacrifices. They started kissing those calves. All abominable acts in the sight of God. Israel lost its witness to the nation. We study in Genesis chapter 12 when God is calling Abraham, and we see that through his descendants, through that particular nation, the remaining nations will be blessed. The pagans will be blessed. And God is calling him. God is promising him. And Israel had to be the light to the people, light to the nation. But here we see Israel lost its witness to the nation because of idolatry. They committed idolatry. God warned them very clearly, but they ignore that warning. They ignore that warning, and they walk in the path of self-destruction. Now, in today's time, I am very sure whoever is sitting here, we are not into the idol worship in literal sense. We know we are not doing. I am assuming that all of us here in this community. But they can also be the spiritual idols of materialism, fame, position, and power. And there are many more things. In our context, when we talk about idols, it can be anything that takes the place of God as the most important focus and priority in our life. So I think this morning we have to check ourselves, we need to examine ourselves, that is there anything that is taking the place of God and taking away and throwing God somewhere in different positions, at different level. Do we have anything this morning in our life that is taking the position of God, the place of God in our life? I want all of us to think about this question. I want all of us to ponder upon this question. I know we don't worship idols in literal sense. But I'm very sure that many Christians, they have many idols, spiritual idols, and uncountable. Right? Sometimes the power, the money, the fame, the education, the credentials, and materialism, and so many other things. Let me tell you, if you find yourself that you are having such kind of thing which is taking the place of God, I want to warn you, I want to tell you, this is one of the indicators that you are walking on the path of destruction, self-destruction. I want all of you to think over this particular thing seriously. Are you walking on a path of self-destruction? Do you have any idols at present in your life? Many times the relationship becomes idol in our life, and that is taking away God from his priority place and keeps God somewhere, or God is nowhere in our life. Please think over this. Now, here we see a few things are mentioned in verse 3. Therefore, they shall be as the morning cloud, as the early dew that passeth away, as the chaff that is driven with the whirlwind out of the floor, and as the smoke out of the chimney. Here, God sees such piety, the religiosity that Israel was having, as being as insubstantial as like morning mist, like morning dew, like chaff swirling away from the threshing floor, and like smoke escaping through windows. That remains for some time and it vanishes. It remains, it looks beautiful, it looks something appealing for some time, but then within few minutes of time it goes away. It is not helpful, it is not appealing, it is not powerful, it is not helping. And that's what we read here in verse 3, that they shall be as the morning cloud. In some version it says like morning dew, and as the early dew that passeth away, as the chaff that is driven with whirlwind out of the floor, and as the smoke out of chimney. It remains for some time and it goes away. It remains for some time and it goes away. Now, I want all of us to just imagine that we are walking through a dense forest, and we are very much excited by being in that forest, exploring that forest, and we are going further, and we are stepping into the quicksand, right? Liquefied soil that doesn't have strength to hold any kind of weight, and person is in that quicksand. Maybe earlier that particular person found it very exciting, very appealing. He was thinking that this can bear his own weight and he would not be in danger, he will not go towards destruction. But after stepping into that quicksand, he started sinking into that sand. The more he struggled to come out, he is going more and more inside. And many times, idolatry is like quicksand, experiencing a quicksand. At first, we may not see the danger of it. We may see it as very beautiful thing in our eyes. We may see it as most powerful thing in our eyes, in our life, but when we go further, we end up in being suffocated. And it is harmful to our life. It is harmful to our life. The first indicator, idolatry. Idolatry. Do you have any idols in your life? You must be enjoying, in worldly sense, those idols. But let me tell you, at later, as you go further in that idolatry, you are going to damage your life. You are going to destroy your life. You are going towards destruction, and you must come out of that. So that is the first thing. Now, when we read this particular chapter, verses from 4 to 8, we are shifting to that particular portion. And I am seeing another indicator here. Another indicator. And this indicator is pride and self-reliance. Pride and self-reliance. Now in the Bible, we have multiple examples of people and community, those who had self-reliance. They depended on themselves. They were feeling self-sufficient. They didn't want to depend on God. Right? One example, just I would like to draw your attention, King Saul. King Saul, when he was appointed as a king, he was very much humble. He had humility. And in later period of his life, as he was leading Israel, we see that humility disappeared. And we see that he took many decisions, he took many actions that took him away, took him away from God. He became a self-reliance person. There are many examples. Israel also became self-reliance. Here we see in the previous portion we talk about the permanence of the Lord contrasts with the vanishing mist and dew. The permanence of Lord contrasts with the vanishing mist and dew. In verse 3, we talk about. Now, when we talk about the people of Israel, we see in their life, God is the one and only God who has been with them ever since their deliverance from Egypt. And at the time, he gave the 10 commandments, the first of which was, thou shalt have no other gods before one. In Exodus chapter 20, verse 3, we read. And we also know about the miracles that God performed, the wondrous sign that God performed while bringing his people out of that slavery, out of Egypt. We know that he provided them food, he provided them water, he did so many miraculous things. He cared for them. We know about all these things. Whatever they were in need, they were given all those things. And the later we see, they became proud. Even we see in the wilderness, many of times they didn't trust God. They went away from God, right? And we see they attributed their success to their own efforts and forgot the Lord. There's a great danger. Attributing their own success to themselves, to their own efforts, and they forgot God. Are we doing this? I think many of the times. When we are in the peak of our life, in the peak of our career, many times we forget God. We forget what God did in the past. What miracles, things God did in our life, in the life of our family in the past. We forget all those things. And we take all the credits for our success. We take the credit for whatever in the place we are, and we remove God from that picture, from that particular frame. Attributing our success to our own efforts and forgetting God, God, who brought us out of so many difficulties, who brought us out of so many dangers, who brought us out of many, many things, who provided, who showed us a way. And forgetting Him, attributing our success to our efforts, to ourselves, and that is the dangerous thing. Wandering away from the Lord puts people in a dangerous path. Let's remember this. Wandering away from the Lord puts people in dangerous path. Here, the passage that we read, verse 4 to 8, we see that Lord uses the imagery of wild beast, like lion is there, leopard is there, bear, to express His deep anger at Israel and ferocity of His judgment. He is using those imagery, and He is expressing the anger of the Lord because the people of Israel are not doing what they ought to do. Do you see your constant need of God's presence and help? That is the question. Do you see your constant need of God's presence and help? Do you need God every time? Do you need God today? Do you need God tomorrow? Do you need God maybe when you are living in the peak of your life? You are very much successful. Do you need God in those times? Or do you need God only in the time of troubles, when you are in need? Many times it happens, even in education, theological education. Right? We feel that I know so much, I have so much of knowledge, I am a very intellectual person, and I don't have to depend on anybody. I don't have to depend on God. We became self-reliant. We depend on ourselves more. In ministry it happens. We are successful and we can become proud of the success that we are seeing in our ministry, and we become self-reliant. It's happening with many servants of God. It is happening with many theologians. It is happening with many lay people. They start relying on themselves, self-reliance, self-sufficiency, being proud of all the achievements, and not crediting God for all those blessings, but crediting themselves for all their achievements and all their crediting their effort for all their achievements. Self-reliance person would say, I can do it myself. I can do it myself. But the person who depends on God, who rely on God, would say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthened me. Like Apostle Paul said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Do you need God today? Do you need God at this moment? Do you need God in your future when you are at the peak of your career? When you are at the peak of your ministry? Do you need God when you have all things that you require in this world? Is a question. Do you need God? Do you see your constant need of God's presence and help? Please ponder upon this particular question this morning. Now, the third part so second indicator is pride and self-reliance. Okay? If you see yourself in that category, if you see that you have these two things in your life, you have pride and you are having self-reliance, let me tell you, you are on your way to self-destruction. The first thing we talk about, idolatry. That is the first indicator. The second indicator is pride and self-reliance. If you say you have this, let me tell you, there is a great danger ahead. You are going to destroy your life. If I am having that thing, that kind of attitude, I am going to destroy my life. I am going to destroy my ministry. The third thing that I would like to draw your attention is in verse 9 to 11. The folly of mistrusting God. The folly of mistrusting God. The folly of mistrusting God. Israel paved its own way to destruction by rebelling against one who was helping them. We read in verse 9, right? Israel is preparing its own way towards destruction by rebelling against the one who was helping them. Now, when we read in 1 Samuel chapter 8, we see the people of Israel, they are longing for kings, earthly kings. They are demanding earthly kings to Samuel. They wanted earthly king to lead them. They wanted earthly king to guide them. They wanted earthly king to fight battle for them. They wanted earthly king to have administration over them. And that was the influence of surrounding nations, surrounding pagan people. And they wanted to have a king for themselves. They wanted to have a king for themselves, one who can lead them, guide them, fight for them, administrate them. And then we see that in 1 Samuel. And then in 1 Samuel chapter 8 verse 7 says, "And the Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee, for they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I shall not reign over them." God is telling this to Samuel. They have not rejected you, they have rejected me. This is one of the follies of mistrusting God. Right? Just recently, just before, we talk about the miraculous things, the blessings, the food, the protection, the provision, the guidance, everything they enjoyed from God's good hand. And now they are saying that we want earthly king because other nations are having earthly king. We want them to lead us. We want them to battle for us. We want them to get victory for us. They are going away from the God who brought them out of slavery. They are forgetting the miraculous things that He performed in bringing them out. They forgot the provision that He made for them in their day-to-day life. They say, we want earthly king. And God is telling that they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I shall not reign over them. And here we see that the Lord equates Samuel's rejection with his own, since Samuel's prophetic leadership was Lord's way of ruling his people. Events have demonstrated that the Lord is capable of leading them through internal as well as military crisis. By asking for an earthly king, they are in effect rejecting the Lord, their king. So that was the way that God wanted Samuel's prophetic leadership to rule his people. But they don't want that. They want earthly king because other nations are having earthly kings. Right? Now, we see here they started trusting on those earthly kings. In other passages we read, they started trusting on the possessions they had. They started trusting on the military power, the strength they had. They started trusting on the good things, the powerful things they had. They stopped trusting God. And here we see the foolishness of Israelite people in mistrusting God. The God who brought them out. The God who performed miracles. The God who is all powerful. The God who can do things for them. The folly of mistrusting God. This morning, the question for us is, to whom we trust? Do we trust in this world? Do we trust on human structure? Do we trust on somebody in our family? Do we trust on earthly leadership? Or do we trust in God who has brought us thus far? That is the question I want all of us to ponder upon. To whom we trust? To whom we trust? We see Israel failed in trusting God. The folly of mistrusting God. They wanted kings. They started relying on the might of the army. They started relying on the things of the earth, things of this world. They started relying on the leadership of this earth, of this world. They started mistrusting God. The folly of mistrusting God. Do we mistrust God today? Have we gone through the time that we mistrusted God even after experiencing His goodness in our life, His power in our life? It's a question. Let us ponder upon this question. Do we trust in God? Or do we trust in human structure? Do we trust in this world rather than trusting on God? This is the third indicator. If you say that you are mistrusting God time and time again, you are mistrusting God every time, then let me tell you, you are walking on the paths of self-destruction. Future is not going to be good. You may think it is very promising, it is very appealing, but let me tell you, this is just your assumption. You are going to hit hard somewhere and you will not be able to stand. This is the third indicator. Mistrusting God. Not trusting in God. Not believing in Him for anything in your life. Israel didn't trust in God. The folly of mistrusting God. The folly of mistrusting God. If you say that all these indicators, right, my life is also showing these indicators, you don't have to worry. Turn to God this morning. Turn to Savior. He is able to restore your life. He is able to bring you out of the path that you are walking, which is leading towards destruction, to His path, where there is life, where there is peace, where there are blessings, where you enjoy your relationship with God. Turn to God. He would definitely restore your life. This morning, my brothers and sisters, these few words that I have spoken for all of us. If you are on the path of destruction, if you see yourself in this condition, please turn to God. He is able to restore your life. He is able to take you out of that path that is leading towards destruction. May God bless all of us through this sharing, and may God help us to understand and apply this truth in our life. Thank you.